Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you here today. This is the flagship UN Global Compact Annual Leader Summit. We convene each year thousands of leaders from business, government, the UN and civil society to take stock of progress and drive collective action. This year's summit aims to mobilize the necessary multi-stakeholder collaboration, innovative thought leadership, transparent reporting on progress, and focused data-driven initiatives to secure a resilient future. This summit focuses particularly on addressing some of the most pressing challenges of our time, including the global pandemic and climate change. The ocean has a key role to play in recovering better from the global pandemic, transitioning to a net zero resilient economy, and delivering on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Later this year, the international community will convene for the milestone COP26 in Glasgow, with a significant potential for ocean climate solutions to help close the emission gap for a 1.5-degree future. The ocean's critical role in climate change mitigation and adaptation will be integral to this year's COP26 considerations. The ocean is increasingly rising on the global agenda as the international community recognizes its vital importance for the well-being and prosperity of humankind. However, in order to ensure ocean solutions are science-based and can be scaled up sustainably, we need to better understand ocean science to inform decisions. The United Nations have declared 2021 to 2030 the Decade of Ocean Science, launched this June. Formally launched on June 1st, 2 weeks ago, to provide a common framework to ensure that ocean science can fully support sustainable ocean management and the achievement of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. IOC UNESCO is the United Nations body responsible for coordinating the Ocean Decade. For this breakout session, hosted in collaboration with our partners at IOC UNESCO, we will explore the role of business in the Ocean Decade. And we have an distinguished panel of speakers from Iberdrola, Maersk, Seedling, and Bolton Food. But first, to our partners at IOC UNESCO, and to deliver the opening remarks for today's session, I'm very pleased to hand over the floor to our good colleague, Vladimir Ryabinin, Executive Secretary of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. Vladimir, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eric. I would like also to thank in your name all Sustainable Ocean Business Action Platform of the Global Compact, because you absolutely rightly said that our cooperation is excellent and is taking us to saving the health of the ocean and working in the ocean sustainably. And thank you very much for introducing IOC. Indeed, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO is the home of ocean science and the United Nations system. And as all United Nations, when in 2015 the Sustainable Development Agenda, the 2030 Agenda was proclaimed, we started to think what is so important to achieve this agenda. And I think a key element came in 2016 when the first assessment of the United Nations of the state of the ocean clearly stated that the humankind was running out of time to start managing the ocean sustainably. Our society, our life is very science intensive. And the future of our civilization is also very much dependent on the ocean. So if you logically construct all the links, you will immediately come to the conclusion that the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development is the key answer to many questions. And in 2017, IOC proposed to United Nations to conduct this decade. This was reviewed, and decade was proclaimed by United Nations General Assembly. So since then, we have been working tirelessly with partners like Sustainable Ocean Business Action Platform. I would say thousands of people, hundreds of organizations, dozens and dozens of countries to coin the plan for the decade. Now we have an implementation plan for the decade already in place, adopted by the United Nations General Assembly. And the plan speaks about the qualities of the ocean. There are 7 qualities of the ocean: clean, resilient, safe, productive, which is very important for business, inspiring and engaging ocean. You can easily see these are qualities not only really of the ocean only, but also of our qualities of people and our relations with the ocean, and 10 challenges. And one of the topics of this summit is about climate. And the ocean climate nexus is one of the 10 challenges of the decade. This is the initial areas of work of the decade. So we need solutions. So indeed, I would like to refer you all to the seminal report of the world-known economist Nicholas Stern and his group that for the first time clearly stated that inaction will cost more losses than investment into climate domain. And the same applies to the ocean. The recent developments clearly show that investment in the sustainable ocean economy will pay. It will pay through better climate, say cooler climate. It will pay through a return on investment that may be increasing the return of the ocean economy almost 10 times, creating renewable energy, creating more food. And speakers here will show how this can be done, but we have to organize ourselves. So the decade is nothing but a platform for us working together, to co-design science, to co-create science, find solutions. You know, I am an oceanographer, and I know how ocean science was developed. It was developed in the sense of curiosity, sense of discovery. But now we need solutions, not just alerting the world what is wrong with the ocean, but also some solutions. And there are solutions indeed. So it is possible, I already said, that to develop ocean economy in sustainable ways. And for that, we need, and speaking also about climate, we need to mainstream climate dimension and carbon dimension in ways of dealing in the ocean. That would be in maritime spatial planning, in maritime transport, in fisheries, in generation of food, in tourism. So it is clear what can be done. We just need to invest more data, more science. And because of that, I think the prospects are absolutely amazing, but what we need is ingenuity of the private sector. We need your innovation skill. We need your interest. But also what is important for me, really personally, because I'm not a business person, but Eric is running this. And you know what I can really see in this thousands of organizations, thousands of companies that speak in the global summit, how ecological, how noble is the atmosphere in this environment. So we would like you on board to run the decade. We really need 10 years because we are starting something big. Very soon we will announce more than 30 different programs of decade. You will be amazed by the innovation, also the breadth of the program. It's not about hard science. It's about us all living in harmony with the ocean. So welcome to the joint meeting with the Sustainable Ocean Business Action Platform and IOC. And I know that the speakers will be really hitting the nail on the head of the problem. So I'm really all ears to listen what is going to be said today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vladimir, for those inspiring and kind words, but also for the important perspectives on the hard science and applied science. And it's really about both here, because the role of business is important for the decade. And we are very excited about the unique opportunity presented by the UN Decade of Ocean Science. The UN Global Compact remains committed to support and promote the inclusion of the private sector in delivering on the objectives of the decade. I think this is a common goal and a common responsibility and a common opportunity, because there's lots of business in good science and good science collaboration. We can't miss out on this big opportunity. At the UN Global Compact on the ocean work for the last 3 years, we have defined 5 tipping points for a healthy and productive ocean. It's about sustainable and traceable seafood, decarbonizing the maritime transport sector. We need to have more renewable energy. We have to tackle marine pollution. And the fifth, and maybe most important one, is that we need more knowledge and collaboration on data and science. We cannot go without that. And in 2019, at the UN General Assembly, a week in 2019, we launched the UN Global Compact Sustainable Ocean Principle. It's a framework for responsible business practice in the oceans. And companies signing up to those principles commit to disclose their footprint on the ocean, and as well as their social and labor practices. But additionally, one important part of those principles is transparency and data sharing. It's a commitment to share data which are not bound by contract, but access data from business activities. Very important to do this, and IOC UNESCO is the focal point this decade to really generate global networks to increase this. Scaling up large-scale investments from the private sector will be vital in achieving the objectives of the Ocean Decade, as well as the 2030 Agenda. It really goes hand in hand. And investors are looking more and more to ensure that the companies that they invest in are sustainable and have science-based, setting science-based targets and are able to report on their footprints. So innovative new finance mechanisms like the Blue Bond Framework show significant potential to catalyze investments for the ocean industries to deliver on the 2030 Agenda. And what is really the view of the private sector? That is what we're going to discuss today. We have a distinguished panel with us. We have from Maersk, Upper Møller-Maersk, we have Ingrid Marie Vincent Andersen. She's the head of decarbonization targets. From Seedling in Malaysia, we have Ms. Algeria. And from Iberdrola in Scotland, we have the Global Development Director, Mr. Richard Britton. And from Bolton Food, we have the Global Sustainable Director, Luciano Pirovano. So I have one question to all the because we need to scale up sustainable solutions. Business needs to work together with science to ensure operations are science-based. And in turn, science needs the private sector to innovate and implement new technological innovations to enhance ocean science. So I would like to ask you all, why is improved ocean knowledge important for you as a company? And how can it help you make better business decisions? I think I'll start with you, Richard Britton of Iberdrola.
Thank you very much. So I don't know how much people are aware of where offshore wind is at the moment. So as of 2020, we had 6 gigawatts of offshore wind turbines installed globally. And the expectation is that that's going to increase by 70 gigawatts by 2025, really driving globally an increase in renewable energy through wind offshore. And that's going to increase with a significant factor in the Far East. But we're seeing growth, obviously, in the US. Europe continues to grow in this market. And we move further offshore as well. We look into floating foundations, which again grows the opportunity that we have for delivering significant amount of energy from renewable offshore wind. So clearly, when we talk about offshore wind, we are operating in the ocean and in the offshore environment. And that is something that is a relatively new thing. If you look at offshore wind as an industry, it is still relatively new in its life cycle. So any understanding that we have of the ocean is important to help us progress and understand. And that is right through our life cycle, from the very early stages of project development and understanding where do you place a site, where is good for an offshore wind development, through construction, through operations and maintenance, and right through to finally decommissioning. And how do we leave the ocean from when we found it? Do we take everything away, or does taking everything away actually start to disturb some of the environments that have created around the offshore wind farm over the 20 to 30 years that the project's been in place? So from our perspective, we really look at to speed up net zero. Our understanding of ocean data is fundamental to us, and one of the key factors where we see that is post-construction monitoring. It's how do we feed back all the information that we gathered and we interpreted during the phase when the project is a concept, how does that really relate when it's built? You know, what we said was going to happen, did it happen? And if it didn't happen the way we thought it was going to happen, what is the difference? Is it positive? Is it negative? What can we learn for the next round of projects that are coming through? And how can we expand that data globally? Because there are parts of the industry, certainly around Europe, that are getting quite mature now, but we're finding that the number of markets where offshore wind are growing, they're very new to offshore wind. And it's about making sure that we get that best practice, that best understanding of environmental impact, and we make sure that we take that to the new places. So where would we like to see, you know, where do we see the big changes from an ocean data? Well, we want to see that data sharing. That what we don't want to be doing is having developers gathering data for the same space for very specific purposes. What we would prefer to see is data being gathered in a holistic fashion that benefits developers globally, rather than everybody acting in competition. Because if you look at the amount of money that's being brought into the industry, there's a clear opportunity there to better look at data and data gathering and data interpretation, rather than people acting effectively selfishly and looking after their own interests. And if we want to drive towards net zero, we want to make sure that we have a better future. Then what we want standard scopes of data collection globally that the market can either deliver or government support us in delivering. And that means that we're spending the money in the most appropriate fashion. We're delivering data in a way that benefits everybody. And it means that we can grow more rapidly as a business entity and also as an industry that continues to deliver renewable energy and help drive down towards net zero and meet all those targets that we have, either in Europe, in the US, in the Far East, to get that carbon footprint down. So I think that's probably where we're at, if that helps.
Thank you, Richard. I think that was a broad answer, but some very key takeaways. I mean, the EIA report in May clearly stated that the build-up of offshore renewable energy has really have to bloom and boom. But as you say, if we don't share data, we will slow that transition down. We need both global and government partnership on sharing this data, so we can do the best practices swiftly available for governments who are very little developed when it comes to offshore wind projects. Yeah. And you know, global data sharing, global insights. What other industry than shipping is as global as that? And over to you, Ingrid Andersen at Maersk. Why is improved ocean knowledge important for you as a company?
Yeah, thank you. Well, we're the largest container shipping company in the world, and we operate around 700 container vessels all around the world's oceans. So the ocean is very, very close to our hearts and to everything we do in our business in Maersk. And we care for the ocean in our daily operations by minimizing spills and waste emissions and discharge of harmful materials. And for the shipping industry, this is really also the decade of action. We have very ambitious decarbonization goals in Maersk, and reducing our CO2 emissions will also have a positive effect on the ocean health, because the lower CO2 emissions result in reduced acidification of the ocean. But we see our decarbonization journey as something more complex and more broad than ocean science, because it involves a lot of activities on land, also the whole development and scaling up of new solutions, and infrastructure needs to be done and be done rapidly, and technologies for our ships need to be developed as well. Yeah. But the ocean is hugely important, and sea transport remains the most energy efficient way of transporting goods. 90% of all goods are transported in the world via sea, and shipping emits only 3% of all CO2 emissions in the world. And the world depends on sea transport to keep developing and to keep being prosperous. And we have a very energy efficient fleet, but being energy efficient will not get us to zero emissions. Energy efficiency still plays a major role in our journey, and we have reduced our CO2 emissions almost by 50% since 2008 per transported container. So we're getting there, but it needs we need to do more. But where we really need to learn from the ocean is in the daily operation on our vessels. So what's key to us is to, of course, use as little fuel as possible when we sail across the ocean, because the less fuel we use, the less CO2 we emit. And the ocean has a huge impact on how much fuel we use because of the waves, the currents, and the wind that all act on the ships when we sail across the ocean. So understanding the ocean, understanding the weather at sea, the wind, the waves, the wave patterns, the wave direction, and the currents is hugely important to us when we plan our routes, both long-term and short-term. We very carefully consider the weather forecasts, and we run simulations on our routes and so on to get the most out of ocean science. And there's still a lot of things we don't know about the oceans. There's a lot of uncertainty around weather forecasts, wave forecasts, and so on. And we're continuously trying to improve the data that we base our operations on, both to reduce our energy consumption on board the vessel, but also to enhance the safety of our ships and our crews and our cargo. So we need to understand the ocean. We need to be able to predict the waves that the ship will encounter as accurately as possible to minimize the risk of loss and damage to the cargo we carry. And when we design ships, we design them for a 25-year of operation in ocean waves. So ocean science and wave science is really important to us in everything we do at sea. And given climate change, weather at sea also changes, and we need to understand how these changes, how the increased frequency of storms and increasing wave heights will affect the routes we take across the oceans and so on, and also how the increasing sea level will affect our container terminals in the coastal areas.
Yeah.
And this all needs to be based on data. And our ships are out there in the ocean where there's not a lot of other equipment available, and in many instances we actually install weather stations on board our vessels that transmit weather data to shore in EU projects and in other industry projects where partners get access to this data from our vessels. So we measure air pressure, humidity, sea surface temperature, wind speeds on board our vessels, on board a lot of our own vessels, and this data is made available for research and for improvement of these weather services. And we deploy drifting buoys that measure ocean currents and so on. So we try and contribute to the science and the data collection. Data is scarce, so that's where a lot of our ships out there can contribute with helping to collect this data.
Thank you. I mean, this is part of the core of the idea of collaborating with the private sector, because a company like Maersk going in line between two cities year after year, season after season, day and night, you can measure so much interesting changes in that current seawater over time, and we know that some of the companies have shared lots of historical data, and this is very key for science, of course, but as you say yourself, it's also a good way to improve operations. And with a sharp decarbonization expectation for shipping, one have to both drive for zero emission solutions and cut emissions while researching for those infrastructure and onboard solutions. So some very good perspectives. Thank you for that. I'm moving over to you, Ms. Algeria, and at Seedling in Malaysia. What is the role of science for your company?
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric. So as a company that actually aim to provide more seaweed to the farmers, help them to grow more, we have a strong belief that seaweed industry can provide the solution. We know that the seaweed, it has a tremendous potential, whether it been used for an alternative options for food products, fertilizer, biofuels, and also maybe bioplastic. It's actually moving in a different direction. However, we realize that this industry is still in an early stage and we need to expand it, make it more common and be known to everyone in the world. This actually is really important because it can help to increase the production, creating more jobs to the people, and importantly, what we can do to our environment is that this seaweed industry can help in cleaning the ocean environment that we love. And lastly, it can help in capturing more carbon for the benefit of our world. But then, to achieve this huge dream, this huge goal, we need to have a strong foundation. And that's what we believe science role is. We need it to be a core element because we need to understand how it works, how to improve the productivity, and to make the research with a strong value. So with this rigid and a concrete basic, it can help to find a solution, but then at the same time, we cannot leave the scientific world behind. Then, like what we are doing here in Seedling, knowing different species or the environment's variable actually can help in the decision making. It is needed because it will become a reference and also a baseline in creating new ideas and to innovate a new product. At the same time, this can contribute to tackling the current problem and we can come out with the solution for that one. So I really want to highlight that the more understanding of the science that we have, then more solution can be created. And how this actually help us to, in a decision making, is since we know it's already become the standard, the knowledge actually allows us to understand how we are affecting and also being affected by the changes in the air, in the ocean environment. Yep. For example, with an updated article, we know we already have that standard. It's just we need to add the value, add more research, and then invent a new product and also bring the knowledge gap to be closer. Yeah, so basically that's what is really important because without the science, we cannot move forward. It needs to be together. Yeah. That's it.
Thank you so much, Alderia. And I think this was a good segue because we started with producing renewable energy with Iberdrola, then cutting emission in shipping, and then actually removing the carbon in seaweed because it's the only big potential that we see in the ocean for big nature-based carbon removal is seaweed farming, which happens locally all over the world. And it can be started by local entrepreneurs all over the world. And we need science to measure and verify and avoid threatening the biodiversity, but really take out the potential of this fantastic industry. And that moves us nicely over to you, Luciano Pirovano, at the Bolton Food, because you're also keen on having a sustainable ocean practice in your company, and you've signed the Sustainable Ocean Principles. But what does ocean science means for you? Why is that important?
Thank you, Eric, for this very interesting question. I'm happy to be with you in this very nice debate and discussion. Science is really, really important. Bolton Food, as business unit of the Italian family-owned multinational Bolton Group, is a leading company in the tuna sector. We have always been committed to the biggest challenge for our sector, the most material one, which is, as you can imagine, guarantee and spread the sustainability of fishing along our entire supply chain from the sea to the plate of consumers. We have the ambition to become the most sustainable tuna company for the world. We say for because we believe it's the right thing to do, and we want to lead the whole sector toward better standard. And to achieve this challenging goal, we use a strategic partners, and we have an approach which is global, scientific, and multi-stakeholder oriented. As you can see, each single word there is of enormous importance, and there is the word science. Science is key for our sector. The long-term conservation and sustainable use of global tuna fisheries is our goal, and we strongly believe can only be managed and achieved through science-based practices. That's why in 2009, we contributed as founding member to the creation of the International Seafood Sustainability Foundation, which is currently a leading authority recognized globally in the tuna sector. ISSF has been founded on the principle that effort to improve tuna stock sustainability must be driven by science. It brings together the most authoritative marine scientists, biologists, and several NGOs, including WWF International. The ultimate goal of ISSF is to help fisheries achieving the MSC certification, Marine Stewardship Council certification, which is the most reputed and robust currently available environmental certification worldwide. ISSF will achieve this goal by promoting science-based initiative for the long-term conservation and sustainable use of tuna stock, as well as reducing bycatch and promoting the health of the marine ecosystem. For your information, ISSF has three pillars, three areas of work: science, influence, and verification, but the first one by far is the most important. It's about tuna stock health, it's about bycatch reduction. Participating company like Bolton has to be in compliance with ISSF conservation measure, and these measures are related to the most important issues: supporting the regional fishery management organization, traceability, data collection, bycatch mitigation, illegal unreported and regulation fishing, and so on. I had the pleasure of being ISSF chairman for 4 years, and I was really impressed by the enormous preparation of the ISSF staff, and I understood really how much is important science research in the improvement of tuna sustainability. So we really think that industry needs scientists and vice versa. It is in the interest of the industry to have a scientific approach to take the right responsible decision, but on the other side, scientists benefit from the data and the information that industry is putting together about the ocean. That is why ISSF and its conservation measures are so important for us. We work collaboratively with marine scientists, regulatory and legislative bodies, environmental stakeholders, and academics to really utilize research to promote science-based approach that can be tested and implemented concretely in the tuna fishing practice.
Very good. Thank you for that, Luciano. And I think you touch on a very key goal, because without this science-based target and without the science perspective, you cannot really say you have a sustainable industry. You would be in the blind, in the void. It's very difficult. And I think the same goes for the offshore renewables, the new seaweed industry that will grow out of these local initiatives, and also in the shipping sector. And I would like to turn back to you, Vladimir, to get your perspective on the 4 answers we heard now. We have a decade, but we have to start now. And what can these companies do to engage directly in the decade? And what can you be of value for them?
Thank you, Eric. These 4 answers, and I really thank you for, honest and also quite, I would say, kind attitude to what we are starting. They were very important for me. because I think we are now starting to understand the mindset of people. There is a lot of goodwill, and also science, but science sometimes is understood as data and knowledge. But I think we are all facing so much of unknown. For example, Richard spoke about the environment in which wind farms are placed. This is a huge problem of marine biology. So, it's not really an engineering problem. It's a problem of what is going to happen with climate, how climate will affect the marine environment. And this also is affecting how seaweed will be produced in the future. When we speak about shipping, indeed, this boils down sometimes to waves and the wave regime, which is also going to change in the future. And the risks are also going to change. So that holistic view is extremely complicated. And we are trying to approach provide some supply of this by creating so-called digital twin of the ocean. But this twin has to be done on several levels, from global to very local level. So we speak about ecosystem of ocean data. And the complexity of this product cannot be, I think, even understood now, but we need to create a platform for this, create an enabling environment for co-creation of science and data that will fitting your purposes. And then yesterday I spoke to the World Economic Forum, and I felt that I was asked several years ago, what would be the success of the decade? The success in terms of data, and the success I felt would be that if we create a moral environment and an intellectual environment, it will be much more advantageous to measure, generate data, share data, and get the benefit of this. So everyone gets this benefit. So we're trying to create that atmosphere. And I think with the answers that were provided today, we are in a better position to formulate this parameters of this enabling environment for cooperation of science and business. It is a very complicated thing, but this is like always in life. It's thought to be impossible, but now it's thought to be possible. Now it is done. So I hope in 10 years we will really do that. That's the ambition. Thank you.
Thank you, Vladimir. Very, very good and inspiring call to action there. And I totally agree with you. It's possible, and we can learn a lot. We can achieve a lot. I will have a quick follow-up question to all the panelists, but I will start in the reverse order, actually. And I'll actually rephrase the questions, because I think Vladimir said a few very important things, and your own statements inspired me to really ask a bit more particular question. And where I grew up in Norway, northern Norway, in the Arctic, when I grew up, I had whale for dinner every day, because that was the cheapest meat we could eat. So the whale hunters had a good time, and I had a lousy dinner, I thought. Today it's a rare thing. You can get a piece of whale. It's probably in Japan, but at that time it was okay to do whaling. It's not okay anymore because the extinction of the species, of course. What is the future of tuna industry? Will science be able us to increase the tuna stock so we can have sustainable growth in the tuna industry? Do you think, Christian?
Yeah, I think I'm quite optimistic. We are working hard on this topic since, as I mentioned before, the foundation of ISSF. Later, we develop our sustainable development strategy based on 4 pillars: fishing, people, production, and nutrition. We believe that to, I would say, win this big challenge, we need to join forces. That's why our mantra is partnership is our leadership, which is, by the way, as you know, perfectly aligned with the Sustainable Development Goal number 17, partnership for the goal of the United Nations 2030 agenda, and also complies with the achievement of the Sustainable Ocean Principles. Unfortunately, the tuna supply chain is one of the longest and most complex in the food sector, because it involves great variety and diversity of players, the majority of which are in developing countries. On top of that, tropical tuna is caught in the high seas mainly. So you have also the topic of isolation in the high seas. In such a supply chain, so it's key to have an holistic approach which takes into consideration the environmental, but also the social aspects. Yeah. That's why in 2016, we signed a partnership, a transformational partnership with WWF to redesign environmental sustainability standard and to promote responsible fishing, but at the same time protecting the ocean and marine ecosystem. In particular, we are committed to work with them to increase our sourcing and production of sustainable products. By 2024, our goal is to reach 100% of our tuna caught or by fisheries certified Marine Stewardship Council or involve incredible and comprehensive fishery improvement project. In fact, we closed 2020 with 70% on our roadmap, and this is, we believe, a continuous stimulus to improve.
Yeah. We have a bit shorter time here, Luciano, so I think I have to cut you there. But I totally get your point, and I think most likely I can eat tuna in the future. But maybe what's even more likely is that I'm going to eat lots of seaweed. Do you think, Algeria, that in a minute, 1 minute comment, do you think, how can we grow the industry so that all the world can have this low or carbon positive part of the food chain as part of the diet?
Yeah, so we as a company, we actually strongly believe that to ensure and like to spread this same goal, we need to have a solid relationship between the science and the industry. They should be bring closer to ensure a successful impact to the work that is being established. So actually, I want to discuss about 2 points. Is actually the first one is communication. This is really important because we think that both parties, which is the science and also the industry, they need to have the same understanding. They need to discuss what is the problem, and also they are discussing the solution together. So this is the relationship that we want to establish, and that's why it's really important. The second part is the funding, because obviously this funding is actually whether it is from international bodies or maybe from the government, because for a company that's actually in the early research, they really need a lot of resources. So we need something, or we need some opportunity to make it happen. Even though we have the idea, but then we cannot do much without like shortage of money and things like that. And also, for example, that what we are doing here, we are collaborating with grant funding with the local University Malaysia Sabah. And this grant, it supports new ideas. At the same time, it builds a strong relationship between science and also the industry. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. 3 very concrete points from you, and I'm sure we'll enjoy seaweed all over the world in a much larger scale in the coming years. Over to you, Ingrid Maria at Maersk. You have set the Science-Based Target Initiative is about really for a company to understand how can they meet the expectation of the 1.5 degree scenario or 2 degree scenario. It's not an easy process, but it's very important, and because science is not necessarily easy, but it's necessary. Can you share some experience from that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very necessary, and we committed to the Science-Based Targets Initiative back in 2019, and since then we've been working with the parties in the initiative to develop the sector-specific target-setting tools for the shipping industry, and because it's not that easy, it's actually still ongoing. So we haven't set targets yet, but we very much aspire to set ambitious science-based targets, and we believe in science-based targets as the only right thing to do as industry leaders. It's our responsibility to commit to setting ambitious science-based targets. So that's that. We have also committed to setting net zero targets in 2050 across all our scopes. And we believe it's the only right thing to do, and it's the best way to assess and benchmark companies' ambition level and performance in a transparent way, and to hold ourselves accountable for actually delivering on this decarbonization transition. Yeah. A lot of our customers have science-based targets and net zero targets, and they expect us to have it, and we expect our suppliers to have it. So it's also kind of a collective commitment in this respect.
Very good.
It is challenging for a shipping industry to set ambitious science-based targets. And it is because we have ships that last for 25 years. So soon we have to think about the ships we build now. We will still have them in 2050, actually. So we need to think ahead, and we need to think about what solutions to build into them and what fuels to scale up. And we need to partner with the right partners to create the demand. And we need to make sure that the right solutions are developed. And there's no solutions yet for shipping. And we need to actually really speed up and identify them and scale them. It's a very big scaling challenge because the shipping sector needs a lot of alternative fuels in this transition. So partnerships are very, very important. We as Maersk cannot solve this alone, and the shipping sector cannot solve this alone. So R&D is crucial. And everybody's playing a role, and we think it's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem today in shipping, because there's no solutions and there's not really any demand. So we also believe that we play a role in creating the demand and to starting the supply of new fuels, and that's why we've committed to all our future vessels being ready to run on carbon neutral fuels, and we will have a carbon neutral container feeder vessel on the water in 2023, and we do this to get things going and to get this development started, and so we can scale up the solutions with the partners that we need.
That's very admiring that somebody has to start, even though it's costly and uncertain and full of risk. Somebody has to try. But what's very sure is that we need much more renewable energy, not only to power ships, but to power the whole world. And shipping is actually just a small part of it. But are you able? Is it science-based? Is it science-based possible to really deliver this much offshore wind, Richard, the next 10, 20, and 50 years?
Yeah, I mean, we're big fans of science-based targets, and it's something we're actively working towards. I suppose a couple of some of the enablers that we need are strategic monitoring was something I talked about earlier. And one of the things we've done internally is we've looked at a global monitoring forum so that we as a business can look at how we are collecting data and how we can do that better. And that's something that we feel needs to happen externally as well, is that there needs to be a mechanism that allows data sharing to occur on a global basis. And one of the things I wanted to pick up on, well, a couple of things I wanted to pick up on was one of the things that I've been very aware of over the years now, and I've been involved in offshore wind for over a decade now, purely in the consenting environment, is that sometimes we just collect data because we're told to collect data, and it's a repeat, and it's a step over old ground, and it's something we thought we'd move on from, but there are bodies that feel that that there is a process that should be followed, and that means data collection. Because that's what we've always asked for, even if the data already exists or the data doesn't really change much. Instead of looking at how can we do that better, how can we collect the data that we need as an industry, as part of a wider strategic remit, never mind just looking at offshore wind by itself, to make sure that we get the data that we want and need to do things better, rather than just data for the sake of data's sake. And that to me really needs a number of key stakeholders to change the way they view the world and realize that that just following the same old path will not change anything, and we need to do things better. And then the other slightly sideways take I'd want to take on the science-based approach is actually the model that we as a business follow for the way that we do things. Is we call ourselves an intelligent client. What we do is we employ experts to basically challenge both ourselves and the people that we work with in an intelligent fashion, understanding the issues, so that we can talk in an informed way. So we're going to continue as offshore wind grows, and if everybody else takes that sort of approach of ensuring that we've got experts in-house that can really hold us to the right standards, hold us to best practice within their fields, and engage globally with stakeholders. We're going to need these people. We're going to need the skills. We're going to need people trained in all of these ocean sciences, as well as many other disciplines, to support developers in making sure that we make the right decisions as offshore wind grows and renewable energy grows globally.
Very good, Richard. I think that is a good way to sum up the discussions today. And as we all know, it doesn't help if you run fast, if you run in the wrong direction. So get your good consultants and scientists around you and get good guidance so that you run in the right direction, because it's only a decade until 2030 and we have a big job to do. So a big hand to our great panel, to our good colleagues at IOC UNESCO. Thank you for being part of this Leader Summit. Looking forward to work with all of you for this great decade of ocean science. Thank you so much, everybody.